is I do that, my cat stops bathing and she stares at me, her tongue sticking out because I burped so loud. I know I'm crazy, aren't I? What an intro, huh? Hi guys, my name is Anna, and today I'm going to be reviewing Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard by Rick Riordan. So this is the first installment in a new trilogy by Rick Riordan following the Norse mythology, and is about a brand new main character called Magnus Chase, who was actually a cousin of Annabeth Chase from the Percy Jackson and the Olympian books. Overall, this book was definitely fun to read. However, it just didn't have the spark and the originality that the Percy Jackson books had. I don't really know what rating I would give it because it was definitely entertaining, but it didn't really have the depth or substance that I was looking for in the book, and it did kind of feel like Rick Riordan is kind of following a very specific formula when he writes this book. He has the kind of goofy, incompetent side character, the really tough girl character, then you have your mid-hero, who is kind of your average guy who has to deal with things, you know, all the stuff, new stuff that he's thrown at, with all of the mythology. You know, he has a close relationship with his mom, who in this particular book has actually died. And it, again, felt, you know, beginning chaos, a little bit of a lull where you kind of get used to the world, and then you have this epic quest, and then despite all odds, you save the day, and I was just hoping for something a little bit more within this book. However, I would definitely still read it if you really love Rick Riordan's books, and you love Percy Jackson books, or in the Kane Chronicles. I would definitely still read it. It's definitely still a fun read. It just doesn't have quite what I was hoping for. My expectations were pretty high because, you know, again, it's Rick Riordan, and I was wanting another Percy Jackson book, and unfortunately that isn't what I got. I will say that part of this might be that I've kind of fallen out of the age range now for this book. I'm, you know, 17 now, close to 18, so I'm not quite within the age range of this book, which is kind of in between middle grade and YA. People kind of put it in both categories. This character is 16, and there's a little bit more violence in this book than some of the Rick Riordan's previous books, along with some cursing, but other than that, it really reads like a middle grade book, but just with some slightly iffy content that somebody, you know, a parent who, the middle grader might be like, no, 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 they say the word damn it and somebody dies. You know, I don't know how freaky some parents are, you know. Again, overall, I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't quite what I was hoping for. Anyway, now on to my spoiler-filled section, so if you haven't read the book yet, just exit out now and then come back once you've read it, definitely, because I do have some more specific thoughts on some of the things that went down in this book. So the overall plot in this book is Magnus finds out from his crazy uncle that he is the child of a Norse god, and he ends up dying trying to battle a fire titan, and manages to summon his father's magical sword that he has to use. Once he dies, he goes to like this afterlife for fallen heroes called Valhalla, and he ends up sneaking out to try and stop this wolf, who is the son of Loki, from starting Ragnarok, which is like the apocalypse, but the Norse version, and he has to use his magical sword to help him defeat the fire titan and rebind up this wolf so that way he can't, you know, start Doomsday. Overall, I enjoyed it. I just, again, wish there was a little bit more to this book. I didn't really feel emotionally attached to any of the characters. I liked Magnus just okay. He certainly didn't have the lively wit and just the enjoyment of being inside his head and getting to know his thoughts the way you have with Percy or Leo. I do wish that we had had that. I didn't feel like the explanation of some of the Norse mythology was quite as detailed as in the Kane Chronicles or the Percy Jackson books. I still felt a little bit confused on some parts of the Norse mythology. I don't think we, like, really dived into it. I will say it was an interesting twist to have your character die in, like, the second chapter, and then the rest of it being, they're dead, but they're like this warrior, so they're sort of kind of not dead. I thought that was an interesting take on it, to have your hero die, and then it be like their recollection of, hey, I'm dead, but I'm not dead, but I'm still stuck in the afterlife, you know, so I thought that was an interesting twist that we had for the first little bit of the book. I loved the character of the magical sword that's really, I can't pronounce, but who ended up being named Jack. He was my absolute favorite part. I really wish that we'd seen more from him. I hope we get to see more from him in the next book. And I just thought his humor was funny, and just the way he kind of interacted, I thought it was charming, the way he seemed to like Magnus so much. And a sentient sword is just cool. There's no way to just make a sword that can talk not cool. and I just really liked him. I also liked Thor's reference to being pretty much a TV fangirl, which was pretty hilarious. Nothing like the polished version of the Avengers movies Thor at all. Him talking about him needing to catch up on the latest season of Sherlock and then referencing Arrow was pretty amazing, even though of course he ends up being a bit of a dick, like, you know, every god in anything ever pretty much ends up being. I never felt really attached to the side characters of the dwarf and the elf. I can't remember their names. I just didn't feel, you know, that charmed by their clumsy attempting to save the day but not really doing a good job kind of cliche of, you know, where's the Grover character, it's done over and over and over, you know, it's the coach character, you know. So Rick Riordan loves this character archetype, and I just wasn't really feeling it with these two. I did like some of the elements that it went into of the magic using of the elf, and I believe I did like him the most out of the two, but I didn't really care if they lived or died, you know? Which, I mean, if you're reading a book, you need to care about the fate of the characters, but I didn't. And then you have, you know, the typical kind of tough girl side character who was the Valkyrie of Sam, and I liked her character, but again, wouldn't have been crying if she died. I don't think I would have cried if anybody in this had died, except for maybe the sword. But the sword can't die because it's a sword, I guess, unless you break it in half somehow. I'm pretty sure the sword's supposed to be, like, you know, immortal, because in a way it's not really alive. But overall, I would definitely still read it. Definitely give it a shot. It's definitely entertaining. Just don't set the bar up with Percy Jackson. It's more like the last Heroes of Olympus books, which didn't quite live up to their potential, or the last Kane Chronicles book, which didn't quite live up to the potential. So I'm wondering if the series will get better and better as it goes along, or if this is kind of sets the bar for the quality of the series. I hope not, because I would really love to enjoy this series and get into something else by Rick Riordan. However, I do really love Annabeth, so I'll definitely be reading all of them and reviewing them just to see what happens with her and her connection to her family, where, look, my cousin is related to the Norse gods, and then I'm related to the Greek gods. Let's just see how that works out. Is there going to be a feud? I would really love, at some point, a book, besides just the little short stories that we've gotten, of all the different main characters of all Rick Riordan's book series coming together, and then there being actually an interaction, you know, between the different gods of all the different mythology, and the explanation of how they don't interact with one another, like why the Greek gods don't care that the world almost ended in this book. Like, there's no, like, because it would affect everybody, right? It would end up affecting the Greek gods, and it would end up affecting the Egyptian gods, that, you know, the world ends, even if it's the Norse world, it's not like it's a entirely different universe or anything. It's all interrelated because, like, this book has Boston, and then Percy Jackson had New York, and I can't remember off the top of my head what city the Kane Chronicles had. Was it Chicago? London? Something. I don't know. They had some city and it's like the gods, that's like these cities are like the lines of like where the gods don't mess within one another's territories. But I'm like, it's the entire globe and you're saying these gods like don't butt heads all the time. So I think that wraps up my thoughts on this book. A bit scrambled as per usual when I come to reading a book, especially with one that I don't have a definitive, I hated it or I loved it kind of opinion to it. But still, definitely read it. Just not a solid 5 stars that I wish I would have given it. It's probably more of a 4 stars where I liked it. It was a fun read, but I don't necessarily think it's one that I'd ever reread. Anyway, that wraps up my video for now. Bye, guys!